Welcome to the Presbyterian Church in Cadiz, Ohio. We believe the Presbyterian Church of Cadiz exists to share our faith in Jesus Christ with family, friends, and neighbors through our outreach and mission, worship and spirituality, fellowship, and communication.
Reading from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 to 14. That's really loud now, isn't it? For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. Excuse me. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. God has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, God has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. Please forgive me. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before God. And may God speak to us through these verses today. Any fans of 1960s music here? You probably know what I'm going to say then. You know, our scripture reading today has a very unique distinction. It is the only passage from the Bible that ever became a top 40 hit song. In 1966, a band called the Byrds took these verses from Ecclesiastes and recorded them as their folk rock classic, Turn, Turn, Turn. They still play it on oldie stations. Now, that band tinkered with the words a bit. Their version goes like this: to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, and so on. Now, if you think about these verses, they present us with the full range of human experience. They are the seasons of life. Each of us goes through these things to one degree or another. Birth, death, love, hate, gaining, losing, especially gaining and losing weight before and after the holidays, laughing, weeping. And you know, not all of us plant actual crops or gardens, but we do plant our dreams and our ambitions and our hopes. We work at jobs through our lives, and we reap the benefits. We hurt people, sometimes without meaning to. And we help people, sometimes without knowing it. We live in times of war, and we live in times of peace. And maybe sometimes that war is not out there in some country. That war might be in our own family. That war might be in our own heart. Sometimes so is the peace. There are new things that need to be born in us. And there are old things within us that need to die. And there are things that we hold on to and things that we have to let go of. Now, I know that there were certain hopes or beliefs or expectations that I had when I was young that I've had to let go of as I got older. And there are other hopes and beliefs and expectations that I need to keep holding tightly onto, that I should never give up on. Now, this passage from Ecclesiastes asks each of us to ponder what these things may be in our lives. They'll be different for each of us because we are all different. And yet, in some ways, they'll also be the same because we do all share a common humanity. My joy or my sorrow may look different from yours, but we all experience joy and sorrow. Now, many of us, if not most, spend a lot of time and effort focusing only on what we would consider the good things that happen, the happy times. And we try to avoid all those things we would consider bad or unhappy. But Ecclesiastes reminds us that life is not that simple. Life is not so easily managed. So much of life is beyond our control, full of ups and downs, twists and turns. But there is also a truth in the fact that if we focus only on the ups and reject the downs, we won't really have a very balanced view of life. We won't gain the wisdom for living that only comes by embracing all of life. The author of Ecclesiastes goes by a name that can be translated as teacher. And his goal is to pass on the wisdom that he has gained in a lifetime. Now, if you read his book throughout it, he actually sounds pretty pessimistic. He looks at his own past experiences. He looks at what he sees going on in the world. And he comes to the conclusion that most of us are wasting our lives on very vain pursuits. We chase after things that can never really satisfy us, and none of them last. Money, possessions, a name for ourselves, we can lose those at any time. And if we are depending on those things to protect us from harm or to anchor us down so that the winds of life don't blow us about like leaves, well, what happens when they are gone? Vanity of vanities, says the teacher, all is vanity. He says everything evaporates like our breath. Meanwhile, generation after generation of people come and go. The sun rises and sets and rises again. The earth endures. But ultimately, we all pass away. Nothing can change that. And the teacher reminds us that actually death is part of the grand scheme of things. It's part of being human. And it is also the great equalizer because it comes to rich and poor, famous or unknown. Now, it is only when we truly realize this that we begin to value the right things, the important rather than the trivial. It is only then can we stop clinging to illusions that we may have about life. And then we can begin to enjoy life for what it is, this great gift from God, a gift that is actually all the more precious, all the more beautiful, because it is so fleeting and so fragile. This gift of life has many sides or facets like a diamond, And some of those facets are bright and some are dark. But they're all facets of the same diamond, and they all reflect its beauty. Now, the different times of our lives, they each have their own moral and spiritual lessons to teach us. We know, for example, that there are some lessons about life we can only learn when we are older. We could not have learned them when we were young. When we're young, we don't have the experience or the wisdom that often comes with age. But on the other hand, youth is the time when we seem to be more adventurous, when we are more open to things, when we are dazzled by the possibilities of life, and we may be more willing and able to explore those possibilities. Now, this does not mean that being older is being better than being young or vice versa. It simply means that the lessons of youth are not the same as the lessons of age. But they are the right lessons. They are the appropriate lessons for their times. And they each contribute something to us. They help to shape who we are. Now, in the same manner, there are moral and spiritual lessons that we learn in a time of grief that only grief can teach us. There are lessons we learn when we are in love that only love can teach us. So perhaps the point is that true wisdom comes from discovering the lessons that are contained within all the times of our lives, the meaning that each experience can have for us. Now, for the teacher in the book of Ecclesiastes, this means discovering God within each of these times. The seasons may change, he says. Generations may come and go. We will each have our ups and downs. But, he says, I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added or taken away, and so all should stand in awe of God. In other words, God is the one lasting, eternal truth. And so God is really the only truth worth seeking. Now, if the teacher is telling us to seek God in all times, he is also telling us that God is indeed there to be found within each time. God is present in every situation. God is always here. God is everywhere, waiting to be discovered and experienced. Now, not that God is hiding from us. I don't believe God hides from us. But I think sometimes God is hidden from us, hidden by our own lack of vision, hidden by our fears and doubts, hidden because we're not looking, we're not seeking. But just because we cannot always see or feel God does not mean God is not present. There's an old story about a student who went to seek out a wise, holy man, and he asked him, "Where shall I find God in life?" And the holy man replied, "God is with you everywhere." "But if that is true," said the student, "why can I not see God's presence?" "Because," said the holy man, "you are like a fish who in the ocean never notices the water." Or we might even say that God is like the air, which we usually don't notice or think too much about, and yet it fills the earth. It fills each of us as we breathe, and it's necessary for our lives. Or we might consider Psalm 139. "O God, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up. You search out my path and my lying down. You know all my ways. You know my thoughts and my words before I even speak them. Where can I go from your spirit? How can I run from your presence? If I go to heaven, you're there. If I go to the grave, you are there. If I travel to the edge of the farthest sea, you are with me. And if I am in darkness, it doesn't matter. You see me, because to you, darkness is like light. You were even there forming me in my mother's womb." That's pretty intense. In all times, in all places, in all situations, from beginning to end, God is with us. And that's an incredible comfort, an incredible consolation, because it means that there is a holiness within each and every one of our experiences. All of life is filled with the presence of God. And so all of life, good and bad, happy and sad, all of it is sacred. But even as we take comfort in this awareness, we also find a challenge, because it means that we cannot turn away from those times of life that we may not like. We cannot turn away from the hatred, the violence, the ugliness that often surround us, or might even be in our own hearts. We can't turn away from those times that are painful, those times when we have to let go of something or let go of someone that we want to hold on to. Instead, we must turn to those things. We must face them as inevitable parts of our human existence. We need to turn to them to gain the wisdom that they can teach us, to gain the strength that comes from wrestling with those things. And we need to turn to them to find whatever is holy and sacred in them. That is how even what seems like the worst of times, the worst situations we can find ourselves in, that is how those things can be redeemed. And this is how we grow spiritually. This is how we become more mature in our faith. And this is how we become more complete human beings. As one writer puts it, real spirituality demands that we care enough about all the moments of life to live all of them well. The only thing we cannot do in life is ignore it. My friends, these verses from Ecclesiastes are maybe especially appropriate as we continue to take our first few steps into this new year. A new year in which we will face new experiences. There will be ups and downs. We will gain some things, and we will lose other things. We will leave some places, and we will go other places. There will be war, and there will be peace. There will be times to mourn, and there will be times to rejoice. But as we encounter each of these, let us walk with the confidence that God is in whatever time or place or situation we find ourselves, making them holy, making them sacred. Amen.